I pay under $500 a year for travel insurance that covers my entire household, every trip all year long. And I've carried it for more than 6 years. I filed claims on it, and in 4 of those 6 years, it's actually paid for itself. Now, it's a great idea for me and a lot of travelers, but for a lot of you watching this, it actually might be a genuinely bad idea. There's a number sitting in my policy that would leave some of you owing thousands of dollars after cancellation. And it's the exact reason why I can't tell you one size fits all. I will, though, show you a number at the end, along with the 3-question math that tells you whether you can even skip travel insurance altogether, because shockingly, some of you can, and I don't want you to waste your money. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. Now, for years, I cruised like an idiot, and cruising like an idiot means you do silly things, and one day you're going to win silly prizes. For years, I traveled without travel insurance. I went international, I swam with sharks in Hawaii, I did a very dangerous rappelling thing in Costa Rica that probably wouldn't be legal in the United States, and I just assumed naively that my insurance card in my wallet is going to follow me no matter where I go in the world. I never actually called my insurer to ask. Now, what changed my mind was not some sales pitch somebody gave me or a YouTube video that I ran across, but what changed my mind was seeing it happen to other people. I'm in a lot of cruise Facebook groups, and I have seen these horror stories, and I've now cruised enough that I've actually talked to people firsthand. I've seen people medically evacuated off of a ship from a helicopter. I have been on several cruises where there have been catastrophic medical emergencies, and now I've cruised long enough, I've had a few visits to the med center myself. So I've learned the hard way. What's important to understand at the onset is what travel insurance actually pays for and what cancellation does not mean. A travel insurance policy is a contract that pays for specific losses after specific events. And it's not just some magic refund button that you click if you have a bad vacation, or you're on a cruise and you missed the flight because you flew in the same day and ooh, I now should be reimbursed for that. And most of the anger that people tend to have toward insurance policies comes from that gap and that misunderstanding. Trip cancellation is the one that tends to confuse people the most, because people hear the word cancellation and they just assume that it means for any reason. It does not. This is very important. Standard policies have a list of covered reasons, and it's usually things like a very serious illness, a major injury, or a death in the immediate family. A work conflict, a breakup, I have claustrophobia and I don't want to be in an interior stateroom, the weather looks bad, those are not on the list. Now, there is an add-on for that. It's usually called CFAR, or cancel for any reason coverage, and it does exactly what it says. But of course, there are a lot of caveats and loopholes and restrictions, and you do typically have to buy it within just days of your first trip payment. It adds real money to your premium. These obviously don't come cheap, which is why most people don't buy them. And it doesn't even always reimburse you in full. Typically, it reimburses somewhere between 50 and 75%, not the whole thing. And you even have to cancel before a deadline that's written in the contract hits. So it is a legit product. It's just not this magical safety net that a lot of people envision. Trip interruption is the one that I would argue is actually more useful, and it's the one that a lot of people don't talk about. And that's when you're 4 days into your 7-night cruise and something catastrophic happens, or someone at home dies, or something happens back at home, you gotta get back home, and you have to leave the ship. You're not just eating the unused fare and the rest of the days on the cruise, but you're also now stuck buying a last-minute flight home from probably a foreign country at whatever price the airline feels like charging that morning, last minute. So interruption coverage is what helps soften that. Weather is where I see the most confusion. So let me be specific. Say you booked a cruise that calls to the St. Islands, right? St. Martin, St. Lucia, whatever. A storm rolls in, and now all of a sudden the cruise line is gonna give you sea days or send you to Nassau. Well, you might be upset because I love Nassau, but Nassau is not the St. Islands, right? And sea days are certainly not a substitute for port days. So you're probably gonna be upset, but you're also probably not going to get a dime because the cruise still operated, you sailed on that cruise, and an itinerary change by itself usually triggers nothing. If that same storm causes the line to cancel the sailing outright, now in that case, you're gonna have a claim, totally different event. And by the way, whether you realize it or not, every time we book a cruise, most of us don't read it, we're signing digitally a contract of carriage that basically gives the cruise line all the authority in the world to take us anywhere they want, and we have no say or complaint about it. And insurance is built around things that you don't see coming, so buying a policy after a named storm has already formed is also not going to get you covered for that storm. So waiting until a week before your cruise, looking at the forecast and saying, oh, that looks scary, or I'm not going to enjoy my cruise. That is a strategy guaranteed not to work. So don't try to game the insurance system because it's not gonna happen. The insurance industry's got this on lock and they're not gonna let any loopholes get by. Now let me tell you what I personally care about, all right? If I lose a suitcase, I get annoyed. And I actually, in all my trips, never had that happen until recently. But it was an annoyance, it was an inconvenience. But I wear cheap Amazon stuff for the most part, so if my luggage gets lost, it's really not a huge deal. My life's gonna go on. Now, what does scare me though, is a hospital stay in a foreign country. That is a different category of a problem entirely, and that is the section of the policy that I would read first. Here's what people misunderstand about shipboard medical care when you're on a cruise. That medical center is real. The staff are generally, not always in my experience, but generally quite capable, and they can handle a lot of different things. But they're not specialists. They're not a hospital. There's not a whole big team of them. In fact, they're just usually cruise ship crew. And if an emergency happens, they have to be fetched from their room to come to the med center to treat you. There's no ICU. There's no surgical suite for anything complicated. They really just kind of have basic stuff there on the cruise ship. So anything beyond that, you're going to have to leave the ship at the next port that can take you, or they have to call in a helicopter to medevac you out. And I've read so many horror stories of $50,000 bills of people that have a major medical event on a cruise and they have to be medically evacuated off. Then you're in the hospital that may want payment before it even treats you. Not after, before. And if your condition needs you moved somewhere better or moved back home, you might look at an international air ambulance. And now we are again talking tens of thousands of dollars. So when I open any policy or quote, I look at 4 things: the emergency medical limit, the evacuation limit, whether the coverage is primary or secondary, and how the assistance company usually handles payment when you're standing in a foreign ER at 3 o'clock in the morning. So a policy with beautiful baggage benefits, that's nice, but I don't care about that. That's not going to financially devastate me. If I lose my $30 Amazon dress, oh well, so sad, too bad. But if I'm facing a tens of thousands of dollars medical bill in a foreign country, that's what I care about. So that's why for me, medical coverage is the most important thing. So if you are like me and you're concerned mostly about medical coverage, what you probably should think about is what you already have and what you probably don't. Some American health plans do cover you internationally. Some treat every foreign provider as out of network. Some pay absolutely nothing at all. So you cannot know which one you have just by guessing. Or if you ask your HR company when they say, well, we have worldwide coverage, or a call center rep tells you that, that's not an answer either. I recommend that you call your insurer and be annoying about it. Ask about treatment on board a cruise ship specifically. Ask to see the actual policy. Read the fine print. Read the terms and conditions. Ask about the actual countries on your itinerary. Ask about ambulance transport, evacuation, network requirements, stuff like that. So even though you might think you're covered internationally, you might actually not be, and you might not be covered for the things that are most likely to happen to you. Medicare also deserves its own warning because people often repeat blanket statements about it in both directions. Original Medicare generally does not cover care outside of the United States, with a few narrow exceptions. Part B may cover certain medically necessary care, things that happen aboard a ship when the ship is in waters adjoining the US. But again, it gets very complicated. And if you're sick on a ship and fighting for your life, do you really want to be untangling this? And some Medigap and Medicare Advantage plans add foreign travel benefits. So if you're on Medicare, you do need to check your exact combination rather than just trusting what somebody says on Facebook or even me on YouTube. Just read the actual policy. Now, credit cards are another thing people lean on a little too hard. Now, I'm a huge fan of a good travel card. I think anyone that travels at all, even one trip a year, gotta have a travel credit card. And there's one I like in particular after years of researching it. I'll drop the link below, and I do get some bonus points to fund my travel habit. You do sign up for it, but it costs you absolutely nothing. So thank you for helping a girl out. But anyway, shameless plug aside. Some travel credit cards give you things like trip cancellation and interruption, travel delay reimbursement, and lost luggage coverage. And that's legit value. And I do have travel cards, partially for that reason, and I am willing to use these things. But you gotta read what the benefit actually is. Travel and emergency assistance, it sounds like an important one, but often it's just a concierge service. And it means if stuff goes sideways and the stuff hits the fan, they're gonna help you find a doctor and coordinate transport, but it's not going to pay your $75,000 air ambulance bill. Somebody can arrange that flight for you without anyone agreeing to fund it. A premium travel card certainly can supplement a real policy, but in my opinion, it does not replace one. And that's why I actually carry both. Now let's talk about cruise line coverage. I personally don't buy the cruise lines plan, and I haven't for years. Now, if you do notice too, cruise lines, they use third-party providers, and those are ones that you can go out independently and just buy yourself. The policy that I chose to buy is an annual plan, as I noted at the start of this video. It is far cheaper overall, and the coverage in many cases is actually better. And that's the whole verdict, but here's the reasoning. Cruise line protection is popular because it's one click at checkout. They usually kind of put it in your face. And I would certainly rather you click it and take cruise line coverage rather than nothing. But what you're buying though is usually a little thin on exactly the part that I told you I personally care about, which is medical and evacuation limits. On cruise line policies in particular, those limits tend to be low. The coverage is typically restricted to the cruise itself. So all the things like your flights, your hotel, your independently booked excursions are not going to be included. And when these plans offer a CFAR, cancel for any reason feature, it very often pays you not in refunded cash, but in future cruise credits. So that means the cruise line is keeping your cash and they're basically handing you a coupon for future use. A third-party policy, on the other hand, lets you insure the whole trip, pick your medical and evacuation limits, and deal directly with an insurer whose job is your claim, not with a cruise line that has a customer service line that's handling 4,000 other passengers on the worst day of your vacation. Now, the brand name on the policy doesn't decide whether it's good. There are a lot of great insurers out there. The limits and contract language do. I would take a cruise line plan with strong medical coverage over a cheap third-party policy stuffed with a bunch of exclusions every single time. So make sure you are digging a little bit before you buy any product. Now let's talk about annual versus single trip coverage, because this is a part a lot of people get wrong and people ask me a lot of questions about this. An annual trip makes sense for a lot of people like me. You travel a lot. You take 2 or 3 trips a year. You want your whole household covered. You got a whole bunch of kids. You want everyone under one policy. And you're tired of having to go through every single cruise or trip you book, comparing policies, comparing the cruise line policy versus third party, checking the coverage, getting quotes. It's a hassle. I know every year I renew my policy. It covers me and my family for a full year of worldwide travel with 24/7 assistance. And that also applies whether we're traveling together or separately. Now here's the part that surprises people sometimes. It isn't a cruise policy. It covers everything. So I cruise a lot, obviously, but I do road trips too. I don't just live on a cruise ship. So with my annual plan, it covers pretty much everything as long as we're more than 100 miles from home. So rental cars, shuttles, the flight down to the port, a long weekend that has nothing to do with the ship or the road trip that you took because you don't always cruise either, those are going to be covered as well. So an annual plan, super convenient, really great value, especially for people who travel frequently, but it's not for everyone. And I don't want you to just run out and buy it because you think it's easy and it's affordable. A single trip policy is better if you only travel maybe once a year or not that often, or if your trips vary wildly in costs, or you're booking something really big and complicated where you need high customizable limits, or if you have higher levels of medical needs. A bucket list African safari that costs tens of thousands of dollars is not the same insurance problem as a $500 3-night Bahamas run on a Carnival cruise. And if you're buying a single trip, timing changes what you can get. It's really important that you buy within 14 days of your initial deposit. That means the very first payment you made toward the trip, you need to make sure you're looking at and securing your coverage. That's important because that's going to qualify you for maximum benefits, including cancellation coverage and a pre-existing condition waiver. If you miss that window, sure, you can still buy travel insurance. You can buy travel insurance right up to the day before the departure, and you'll still get medical, evacuation, interruption, baggage delay, stuff like that, but you lose the front end. So the cheapest mistake in this entire video is waiting 3 months to even think about it. Now, here's the number I promised and why the cheapest plan could be a big mistake for you. I have the Allianz Annual Premier 2K plan. It's under $500, specifically it's $485 a year. It's for my whole household. I've had it more than 6 years, and 4 of those years, my claims have exceeded what I paid, including last year I had not 1, but 2 claims. And it also includes the time I caught the flu 2 years ago on my birthday cruise on Carnival Mardi Gras and was sicker than a dog. I cruise a lot, about once a month, so a per trip policy every single time would be incredibly expensive and exhausting. It is a Premier 2K plan, so what that 2K means in that name is the cancellation cap. It's $2,000. That's the maximum that this plan will pay me if I have to cancel a trip. And of course, it has to be for a covered reason. Now that works for me for one specific reason. Most of my sailings come through casino offers, which are free. And if you're curious about casino cruising, I'll drop a guide down below. Or they're cheap. I ball on a budget. So my prepaid exposure is usually well under that $2,000 cap anyway. And if it's over it, I'm willing to accept the risk that if something happens on a $4,000 trip, I gotta cancel it. I get $2,000 back, but I'm on the hook for the other $2,000. Now let's look at a different scenario. Now you have a family. They bought the 2K plan. They just bought a very complicated multi-excursion 2-week land, air, sea, $12,000 Alaskan adventure, right? Well, someone breaks an ankle a week out. They cancel. All right, well, Allianz might say, okay, that's covered, or they might not, who knows with insurance companies. But they're gonna send you a check for $2,000. Well, your trip was $12,000, so now you're out 10 grand. Same policy, same premium, completely different outcome. So the plan name tells you that cap, and that's what makes the ladder easy to read. And I'll give you information below where I'll send it to you. I put it together an easy to understand guide of all these plans, what they cost, what they cover, so you can kind of decide what's best for you. Now, all of them, regardless of the cap, include the things that I care about: emergency medical, delay, baggage coverage, but again, especially that medical stuff. So what you're buying as you go up in the higher premiums in the name of the plan, it's higher levels of cancellation protection. And that right-wrong is for you going to be the one that covers your most expensive trip of the year, not the cheapest. So here's the math, and really it's 3 simple questions. How much prepaid non-refundable money could you stand to lose if you had to cancel? That's your cancellation number. After your health insurance and your credit card, how much medical and evacuation exposure is left sitting on you? That's your medical number. Could you write a check for both of those today without it devastating your life? If the answer is yes, then by all means, go ahead and skip it. And I do mean that. If you're driving to Galveston for a $400 3-night booze cruise, you've confirmed your international medical coverage. then losing that $300 would be like a meh, you might not need a policy. Self-insuring is a legitimate strategy when you can actually absorb the loss. If the answer is no, which for most of us it is, buy coverage, but buy coverage that's sized to the number that scares you, and stop insuring your suitcase.